We move on to the last session of the 10th World Congress. That's the Sri Lankan Heart Association at WCC PCI, Cardiomyopathy, Futuristic Cardiac Care. May I invite to chair the proceedings of this session, Dr. IPS Kaldra, Dr. Sumita Chaudhary, Professor Hanumant Reddy, and Professor Sam Lingam. Our opening speaker of this session on the topic problems in defining cardiomyopathies is Dr. R.A.I. Ekanayaka. He is currently the president of Sri Lankan Heart Association, and he is a senior consultant cardiologist at the Institute of Cardiology at the National Hospital at Sri Lanka in Colombo.
Thank you very much, the chair. A very good evening to all of you. First of all, I must thank Dr. H.K. Chopra for inviting us to participate in this fantastic symposium, the 10th World Congress. And he suggested that we take up this topic of classification of cardiomyopathy. And what better way to start the symposium than to express our thoughts on this classification scheme. Now at present there is an obvious confusion. A persistent confusion has been created by the obvious contradiction seen between the common definition and the classification. Now the definition says that a cardiomyopathy is a disease of the myocardium of unknown etiology. But when we go to the classification, we find a long list of secondary causes. And here is a list of secondary causes: autoimmune, the collagen, the storage diseases, some of it is cut off from the screen I believe, toxicity, inflammatory, infiltrative, cancer treatment, nutritional deficiencies, etc. Nor is this an exhaustive list, because the stress, the cardiomyopathy, the tachycardia, which causes a tachycardiomyopathy, has been excluded from this list of secondary causes. So there is a confusion. The definition and the classification do not seem to go hand in hand. So do we really need a system of classification? Yes, we do, because it is useful for research planning and drawing relationships between very complex, multifactorial, concomitant disease entities. So we do need a classification system. Just a historical note on classification: in 1850, the term chronic myocarditis was the only recognized disease which was specific and restricted to the heart muscle itself. In 1900, the concept of primary myocardial disease was introduced, and in 1956 the term myocardiosis was used for non-inflammatory heart muscle disease, the other heart muscle disease being myocarditis of viral etiology. In 1957, the term cardiomyopathy was first introduced. Now when it came to definitions, see the evolution of the WHO definitions for cardiomyopathy. In 1968, it was said that it was heart muscle disease of unknown etiology. In 1980, it was changed a little bit. Diseases of different and often unknown etiology, in which the definitive feature is cardiomegaly and heart failure. And in 1995, we are told that diseases of the myocardium is a cardiomyopathy associated with cardiac dysfunction. Today, the common usage recognizes the division of cardiomyopathies into fourfold categories: hypertrophic, dilated, restrictive, and the unclassified, the non-compaction and the arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathies. But see, in this classification, the term hypertrophic and dilated are used on an anatomic basis. Restrictive means functional basis. So even in the present classification, we are not using a uniform basis on which to base our classification. Yet the distinction between hypertrophy, etc. is not clear-cut. All clinicians know that hypertrophy causes restrictive pathophysiology, but hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is not classified as a restrictive cardiomyopathy. Both hypertrophy and infiltrative pathologies cause muscle thickening and therefore hypertrophy. Therefore, the distinction is not clear-cut. The plethora of genetic knowledge has further confused the situation. Some individuals have the relevant gene but no hypertrophy. You do histology, it suggests hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And so some workers have used the term non-hypertrophic hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Echo assessment has also confused the situation. Some individuals have diminished LV function but no dilatation. The histology mimics dilated cardiomyopathy, and the Israeli workers have used the term non-dilated dilated cardiomyopathy. Cardiomyopathies are not static. The natural history of many cardiomyopathies indicates the operation of a dynamic pathophysiology. Non-dilated disease entities can become dilated. Dilated disease entities can become restrictive and can regress into normalcy. The problem of etiological classification of cardiomyopathies is very grave. Many etiological factors can have the same phenotypic results. For example, dilated cardiomyopathy can be genetic, infective, autonomic, toxic, stress-induced, nutritional deficiencies, postpartum and tachycardia. On the other hand, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy can result from genetic maternal diabetes, mitochondrial myopathies, pheochromocytoma, tuberous sclerosis, and cardiomyopathy of afterload in coarctation of aorta, hypertension, and aortic stenosis. Remember that some sarcomeric gene mutations cause both dilated cardiomyopathy and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Some troponin I gene mutations cause both hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and restrictive cardiomyopathy. Therefore, the etiology does not determine the phenotype. The genotype does not indicate the phenotype. In 2000, expert panel of the American Heart Association proposed the following classification. Cardiomyopathies are a heterogeneous group of diseases of the myocardium with mechanical and or electrical dysfunction that usually but not invariably exhibit inappropriate ventricular hypertrophy or dilatation and are due to a variety of causes that frequently are genetic. Cardiomyopathies either are confined to the heart or part of the generalized systemic disorder, often leading to cardiovascular death or progressive heart failure related disabilities. Now, can we really call this a definition? With so many caveats and diffuseness, this cannot be considered a true definition, for a definition must set limits. This definition of 2000 shows the tendency to formulate a definition to fit the current usage, not really describing the disease entity called cardiomyopathy. Now, the 2000 classification had two major groups of cardiomyopathy. The primary, confined to the heart muscle, and the secondary, generalized systemic effects also seen, also called specific cardiomyopathies. Here we are, the primary cardiomyopathies and the secondary cardiomyopathies. The primary divided into genetic, mixed and acquired. Look at the genetic line, the vertical column there. The last line, ion channel disorders, long QT, Brugada, SQTA, CVPTA, and the Asian sudden death syndrome. These are all channelopathies. You see, in 2006, the AHA classification brought in the channelopathies also into cardiomyopathy, confusing the issue. Many clinicians were unhappy with this, and therefore in 2007, the ESC statement removed the channelopathies, and they were more for unifying the primary and the secondary cardiomyopathies, and it states, with the passage of time, the distinction between primary and secondary cardiomyopathies has become necessarily tenuous, because what we thought primary is now no longer primary for the reason that new etiological factors have been identified, and therefore they cannot be called primary. Therefore, the distinction between the primary and secondary has become necessarily tenuous. And the ESC says a myocardial disorder, a cardiomyopathy is a myocardial disorder in which the heart muscle is structurally and functionally abnormal. In the absence, they have brought in exclusion criteria of coronary artery disease, hypertension, valvular disease, and congenital defects which are sufficient to cause the observed myocardial abnormality. So, a process of exclusion has been brought in, but to a limited degree. In 2007, this is the ESC classification. For lack of time, I will not go into that. Now, the positive features of the ESC classification over and above the AHA classification are twofold. Firstly, the ESC classification deleted the channelopathies from this class of cardiomyopathy. They are no longer taken as cardiomyopathies. Secondly, the ESC moved away from the diagnosis by exclusion. The focus is now on the morphology and function of the heart, hence the differentiation between primary cardiomyopathy and specific heart muscle disease is now abandoned. We suggest, therefore, that in the same way that we use the term heart failure as a resultant stage of numerous pathologies, cardiomyopathy too should be considered the resultant pathophysiological state of numerous causative pathologies. Numerous pathologic etiologies there, But the resultant stage is what we should call a cardiomyopathy, like the pathophysiological state of a heart failure. Therefore, we define cardiomyopathy as a clinical entity of any etiology, where the constellation of clinical features are due to the dominant myocardial pathophysiology. Perhaps we should also define a precardiomyopathy, because genetic mutation can be present, but no covert clinical features of the disease may be present. These patients need no therapy, they need only a follow-up protocol and genetic screening. And a precardiomyopathy is a useful term to have in our vocabulary. The latest classification of cardiomyopathy comes in 2013, the World Heart Federation classification, which is the MOGS system, where they have M for morphofunctional characteristics, O for organ involvement, G for genetic inheritance, E for etiological factors, and S staging of symptoms. So these are the 5 criteria under which the World Heart Federation now recommends the classification. So the shorthand is as follows: DHAARC for dilated hypertrophic arrhythmogenic restrictive, etc. The organ involvement, it may be the skeletal muscle, the auditory system, the kidney, nervous system, gastrointestinal system, and the shorthand is there given. For lack of time, I will not read it out. The genetic inheritance, as is usual, and the etiological factors and the symptomology. How does this classification work? Let me give you a few examples. This classification of the World Heart Federation can carry a plenitude of information. For example, one cardiomyopathy can be called MR, OH plus M plus N plus LI, GN, EG, DN, and then you can read the rest of it for yourself. It describes a patient diagnosed as having a restrictive cardiomyopathy, therefore MR, along with associated myopathy, cognitive impairment and liver disease. Therefore, in addition to the organ involvement of the heart, the brain, the nerves, and the liver is also affected. The patient has GN, the patient has a negative family history and screening, and he was found to carry a frameshift mutation in the LMP2 gene. The mutation was absent in both parents. So see the classification now. And the next second example also you can read off from the slide. I will not read it out for you. There are over 500 mutations in 13 genes described for HOCM, for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy that is, and over 30 genes have been identified as causative for dilated cardiomyopathy. And because of the proteins that have been identified, we now have the subtypes of cardiomyopathies going on to troponinopathies, laminopathies, dystrophinopathies, desminopathies, cytoskeletopathies, sarcomyopathies, saspopathies, merosinopathies, and martinopathies. Just 1 minute more, please. Now you might think this is all very academic. This subtyping, people may think, is of no clinical significance, but it is not so. Genetic cardiomyopathies, for example, you are advised to avoid statins because it causes skeletal myopathy. Mitochondrial cardiomyopathy, if epilepsy coexists, you avoid valproate as it tends to cause pseudoatrophy of the brain. Emerinopathies, you avoid the volatile anesthetics such as halothane and isoflurane. Patients can go into cardiac arrest and malignant arrhythmias. Dystrophinopathies can deteriorate suddenly with just a little bit of fever, a mild flu, and these patients deteriorate. So it is no longer with the thought that this is of no clinical significance. It is important. However, this MOGS classification is not friendly for clinicians. Simple clinicians have problems. Patients come to us, so we modify it. Patients come to us first with symptoms. It was the last in the MOGS classification. Let us put it up in our scenario. I don't know about India, but in Sri Lanka, we are working in a very low resource situation. So we bring up symptoms first. That is how the patient comes to us. Dyspnea, palpitation, syncope, and non-specific chest pain. And you can classify according to the New York Heart Association classification. Then you do an echo for the patient. And on the echo, you determine the ventricle that is affected. Whether it's right ventricle, the outflow of the right ventricle, left ventricle, or the outflow of the left ventricle, or whether it's biventricular. You will notice the atrium are not there. Certain authorities have described atrial, pure atrial cardiomyopathies. Therefore, we might have to add it on to this, but it is not usual to find it in our clinical practice. So after we determine the ventricle, we give the morphology. H for hypertrophy, dilated, restricted, non-compaction, and maybe some other terminologies that we might use. It is only after that that the clinician will start looking for the etiology. whether it's hypertension, ischemic heart disease, arrhythmia, toxins, infection, autoimmune, etc. And subsequently, if you have the facility, you do your genetic testing and complete the diagnosis for cardiomyopathy. So this is my take-home slide for you. The SVM ego classification of cardiomyopathies. We have come a long way since the first definition of cardiomyopathy, and now we have come to a very complex group of diseases, very heterogeneous, but important for us as clinicians to have a system of classification in our mind so that we cast our net wide and we catch a lot of patients so that subsequent genetic classification and determination of this, the finer clinical relevance of these disease entities can be determined. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very nice and elegant presentation. We are thoroughly confused. Actually, I was better off in the beginning itself. I think I like ESC classification. I like to keep it simple, because simple and stupid type of KISS principle. Keep it simple and stupid. That kind of. I think this confusion is not going to help anybody.
Absolutely. That is why, even though the Morse classification is the most recent, we should modify it in our situation so that the clinician, it becomes clinician friendly. And in our practice, follow the system by which we evaluate the patient. Patient comes first, you do your echo, you determine the ventricle, and subsequently you can tell you what goes on.
I'm going to echo Dr. Reddy's comments. I think I really applaud you for, simplifying or attempting to simplify such a complex nomenclature. I like your symptom-based one that you're using in Sri Lanka. I think that's one we should probably keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ekanaik.